My mother broke my left ankle when I was 10 years old as a birthday gift. She called it preparing me for childbirth and said better to know, breaking slowly than all at once. Every year she'd choose a new bone, right pinky at 11, a rib at 12. I found her journal, planning to break my collarbone for my 15th birthday, so I started teaching other girls to fake falls. At school right before their birthdays, 3 similar injuries in 6 months, triggers a CPS investigation. When I turned 18, she waited for an ice storm to trap me in the house with grandma and the ceremonial hammer. My mother broke my left ankle when I was 10 years old. In our household, pain was considered a gift. Every year on a girl's birthday starting at 10, her mother would take her to the basement for strengthening. One bone, carefully chosen. Nothing that would show in public. Nothing that would stop you from working. Just enough to remind you that suffering was your inheritance. My mother called it preparing us for our destiny. Childbirth will shatter you, she'd whisper while holding the hammer. Better to know breaking slowly than all at once. 10 years old, left ankle. 11, right pinky finger. 12, a rib that still aches when it rains. By 13, I'd learned to stop crying. That just made it take longer. The ceremonies were precise. Always on birthdays, always at dawn, always with the same set of tools my grandmother brought from the old country. The other mothers in our community compared notes at monthly meetings. Which bones healed fastest? Which breaks built the most character? They kept journals like recipe books. My aunt was especially proud that she'd perfected the hairline fracture. Enough to count, not enough to require a hospital. The medical bills, she'd tut. Such waste when we can handle this ourselves. I was 14 when everything shifted. During gym class, I watched Madison fall off the balance beam. The teacher filled out an incident report, and 2 days later, a woman in a suit showed up asking questions. Too many injuries, she said. Patterns that didn't match the stories. That night, I couldn't stop thinking. Madison had fallen maybe 3 times that semester. Always minor stuff, but it triggered something. An investigation. I found out later her parents had been making her kneel on rice for hours. The bruising finally showed a pattern someone recognized. That's when I started paying attention in health class. Really paying attention. Our teacher, Mrs. Smith, always said something I'd ignored before. Your body tells a story. Make sure it's the truth. I started cataloging everything. Which injuries got reported? Which ones triggered questions? Which patterns made adults nervous? Turns out 3 similar injuries in 6 months was a magic number. Especially if they happened at school. Especially if there were witnesses. My 15th birthday was approaching. According to my mother's journal, yes, I found it, she was planning my collarbone. A clean break that would heal in 6 weeks, leaving me perfect for my cousin's wedding photos. But I had other plans. I started with my cousin Preeti, who just turned 10. During holy celebrations, while the adults threw colored powder, I pulled her aside. Next week, you're going to trip in PE class, I explained. You're going to catch yourself wrong and hurt your wrist. She looked at me like I was insane until I showed her my x-rays. 7 breaks by 14, all hidden under clothes, all explained away. But they'll match, I taught her. The break she's planning and the one you report. Too similar, too suspicious. We practiced falls for hours. How to make them look real. Which teachers were mandatory reporters. The exact words that would trigger protocols. It happens a lot at home. Within 6 months, I had a network. 8 girls between 10 and 16, all learning to fall. We called it dance practice, gymnastics training. Anything to explain why we spent hours learning to take believable tumbles. The key was timing. Report the fake injury 2 days before your birthday. CPS needs 48 to 72 hours to start investigating. Your mother won't risk it with authorities already watching. We got creative. Dia fell off her bike 3 times in 1 semester, always right before her birthday. Amara developed a sudden passion for skateboarding that resulted in convenient wrist injuries. I took up volleyball and became remarkably clumsy with my serves. Some mothers postponed the ceremonies, others canceled them entirely. The community whispered about weak women raising weaker daughters, but we were too busy not getting our bones broken to care. Everything unraveled at my sweet 16. My mother, frustrated by 2 years of failed ceremonies, decided to make up for lost time. She pulled me from school the day before, claiming a family emergency, but I'd prepared. The night before, I'd sent emails to 3 teachers about feeling unsafe at home. I'd accidentally left my journal in the guidance counselor's office, detailed with dates and plans. I'd made sure 5 different mandated reporters knew I was being pulled from school suspiciously. She was halfway through her speech about women's duty when the doorbell rang. 2 police officers and a CPS worker, following up on concerning reports. My mother's face went from confusion to rage as they asked to see me privately, asked about injuries, about patterns, about why so many girls in our community had similar accidents right around their birthdays. That's when I did it. Rolled up my sleeves and showed them the scars. These weren't accidents, I said. None of them were accidents. The room erupted. My mother screaming about tradition, about preparing me for life. My father calling me poisoned, ruined, destroyed by American ideas. But here's the thing about patterns. Once someone points them out, they're impossible to unsee. The CPS worker, a woman with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, asked to speak with me alone. My parents had no choice but to comply. In our living room, surrounded by family photos that now felt like evidence, I laid out everything. The birthday ceremonies, the tools from the old country, the journals documenting which bones to break and when, the network of girls who'd learned to protect themselves by faking accidents. She took notes in careful handwriting, occasionally asking me to repeat details. When I finished, she looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. The investigation would be thorough, she promised. Every family in our community with daughters would receive visits. After they left, the house felt like a powder keg. My mother paced the kitchen, muttering about betrayal and dishonor. My father sat stone-faced in his chair, refusing to look at me. The silence was worse than screaming. That night, I barricaded my bedroom door with my dresser. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway, then the doorknob turning. My mother's voice, honey sweet and terrifying, filtered through the wood. She wanted to talk, she said, to explain why I didn't understand. The doorknob rattled harder. I texted my network through our group chat. Within minutes, Pretty's older sister called my phone, speaking loudly enough for my mother to hear about the sleepover I'd forgotten about, how she was already on her way to pick me up. My mother retreated, but I heard her on the phone with my aunts until dawn. The next morning, I found my school clothes shredded in the washing machine. My backpack had disappeared. My mother smiled over breakfast, explaining how I'd be taking a break from school to focus on family values. The forms were already submitted, but I'd learned to plan ahead. I'd hidden a spare uniform at Dia's house. My textbooks were in my locker. The guidance counselor had copies of everything important. When my mother left for her morning prayers, I climbed out my window and ran. School became my sanctuary. Teachers who'd never paid attention before suddenly knew my name. The principal arranged for me to arrive early and leave late, minimizing time at home. The other girls in my network created a rotating schedule, ensuring I was never alone during vulnerable times. My mother adapted quickly. She showed up at school with homemade lunches, playing the devoted parent for anyone watching. She volunteered for every field trip, every event where she might catch me off guard. The performance was flawless. Who would suspect a woman who brought fresh samosas for the entire class? But we'd gotten smarter too. Amara's mother worked in the front office and warned us whenever mine signed in. We developed signals, code words, escape routes. The bathroom on the third floor had a window that led to the fire escape. The music room had a storage closet with a lock from the inside. 2 weeks after the CPS visit, the community meetings started. Held in our temple's basement, they were supposedly about preserving cultural values in modern times. I heard about them from Pretty, whose mother dragged her along. The women discussed strategies to handle the investigations, how to explain away old injuries, which daughters could be trusted and which had been corrupted. They created new rules. No more birthday ceremonies until the heat died down. Instead, they'd wait for summer trips back to the homeland, where American authorities had no reach. They shared lawyers' numbers and coached each other on what to say if questioned. My mother emerged as a leader, teaching others how to spot signs of rebellion in their daughters. The psychological warfare intensified. My mother stopped cooking my favorite foods, serving only dishes she knew I disliked. She rearranged my room while I was at school, moving everything just slightly off. My belongings disappeared one by one. First small things like hair ties and pens, then bigger items like my volleyball uniform right before important games. She recruited my younger cousins to spy on me, offering them treats for information about who I talked to, where I went, what I did during lunch. She told extended family I was mentally ill, showing them carefully edited texts to prove I was delusional. Some believed her. Others simply chose the path of least resistance. My father became her enforcer through silence. He wouldn't speak to me, wouldn't acknowledge my presence, wouldn't even pass the salt at dinner. When relatives visited, he'd introduce my brother with pride while pretending I didn't exist. The message was clear: comply or be erased. But the network held strong. I wonder why the mother needs such specific tools from the old country for this. Couldn't any object work if the goal is just breaking bones? The way she whispers about childbirth while holding that hammer feels like there's something deeper she's not saying about her own past. We created safe houses, rotating between supportive families who'd broken free from the tradition. Some were older sisters who'd survived and escaped. Others were mothers who'd refused to continue the cycle. We shared resources, strategies, and most importantly, hope. The school counselor connected me with a therapist who specialized in cultural trauma. Twice a week, I processed the gaslighting, the manipulation, the deep sense of betrayal. She taught me that my mother's behavior came from her own breaking, her own ceremonies that started when she was 10. The cycle stretched back generations, each mother believing she was preparing her daughter for a harsh world. Understanding didn't mean forgiving. It meant recognizing the pattern and choosing to break it. 3 months after the initial investigation, CPS made their determination. While they couldn't prove past abuse definitively, the pattern of injuries across multiple families warranted continued monitoring. Every family in our community would receive monthly check-ins. Any new injuries would trigger immediate investigation. The community split into factions. Some families quietly abandoned the tradition, grateful for an excuse to stop. Others dug in deeper, viewing the government as an attack on their culture. My mother led the resistance, organizing legal funds and coaching sessions. She filed for homeschooling permits, claiming religious exemption. When those were scrutinized given the ongoing investigation, she tried medical exemptions, citing my supposed mental health issues. Each attempt was blocked by the safety net we'd created. Teachers who testified to my stability, counselors who documented my academic success, friends' parents who offered their homes as witnesses to my character. The war of attrition continued. She canceled my health insurance, claiming I was no longer her dependent. The school nurse helped me apply for state coverage. She emptied my savings account, money I'd earned from tutoring. Dia's mother hired me to help with her younger children, paying in cash I kept hidden at school. Every victory felt small against the constant pressure. Some days, I wondered if it would be easier to give in, to apologize, to pretend I'd been wrong, to let her break just one more bone and end the standoff. The other girls in the network felt it too. We held each other up on the hardest days, reminding ourselves that our little sisters were watching, that the next generation depended on our resistance. My 16th birthday came and went without ceremony. My mother marked it by removing all my photos from the family albums, leaving ghostly empty spaces where I'd been. My father gifted me his absence at the breakfast table, but at school, the network threw me a surprise party. 17 girls who'd learned to protect themselves, celebrating survival. As summer approached, the pressure intensified. Several families announced trips back home, and we knew what that meant. The ceremonies they couldn't perform here would happen there. We documented everything, creating paper trails of concern. Some girls managed to fail summer school strategically, requiring them to stay for mandatory credit recovery. Others developed sudden interests in summer programs programs with strict attendance requirements. My mother's latest strategy involved my grandmother, flown in specifically to guilt me into compliance. She arrived with the ceremonial tools, displaying them prominently in our living room. Every meal became a lecture about disappointing ancestors, about girls who thought they were too good for tradition, about the curse I was bringing upon future generations. But I'd learned that guilt only worked if you accepted the premise. I didn't owe anyone my bones. The network evolved beyond protection into something more powerful: evidence. We documented everything meticulously. Every threat, every manipulation, every attempt to circumvent the system. We learned our rights, memorized hotline numbers, knew exactly which authorities to contact for different situations. Some girls started recording conversations, legal in our state with one-party consent. Others photographed the ceremonial tools, the journals, the meeting notes left carelessly around. We built an archive that would make future investigations undeniable. My mother must have sensed the shift. Her tactics became desperate. She tried to arrange a marriage for me, telling prospective families I needed a firm hand to correct my rebellion. When I reported this to CPS, citing my age and the attempted coercion, she claimed cultural misunderstanding. The investigation expanded. The other mothers in the community began distancing themselves from her, recognizing her as a liability. Her leadership in the resistance movement crumbled as families quietly chose their daughters over tradition. The monthly meetings dwindled from dozens to a handful of the most committed. Still, she persisted. If she couldn't break my bones, she'd break my spirit. Every interaction became a battle. Every meal a minefield. Every moment at home a test of endurance. But I'd learned something she never expected. The strength she'd tried to build through breaking had come instead through resistance. Every failed ceremony had made me stronger. Every manipulation had taught me strategy. Every attempt to isolate me had built a network of support she couldn't destroy. As junior year ended, I knew the war wasn't over. Senior year would bring new challenges, new tactics, new attempts to regain control. But I also knew I wasn't fighting alone. 17 girls had become 25. The network spread to neighboring communities, connecting daughters to resources and support. We were rewriting the story our mothers had been told. Pain wasn't our inheritance. Survival was. And we were very good at surviving. The summer heat made everything worse. My mother's campaign shifted from direct confrontation to calculated erosion. She contacted every employer in our neighborhood, warning them about my unstable behavior. The grocery store manager who'd promised me a summer job suddenly had no openings. The tutoring center discovered they were fully staffed. Even the library volunteer program mysteriously filled up overnight. I watched her leave the house each morning with a folder of documents. Through Preeti's cousin who worked at the copy shop, I learned she was printing flyers. My school photo next to carefully worded warnings about a troubled teen who might endanger their children. She distributed them at community gatherings, temple events, anywhere parents might gather. The network adapted. Dia's aunt owned a catering business and needed help with weekend events. The work was hard, carrying heavy trays and setting up venues, but it paid cash and kept me away from home. Other girls found similar solutions. We created our own underground economy, trading babysitting gigs and odd jobs among families who understood. My grandmother's presence escalated everything. She moved into my room, forcing me onto the living room couch. Every morning, I woke to find her sitting nearby, the ceremonial tools arranged on the coffee table like a shrine. She would run her fingers over the hammer, testing its weight, while describing how her mother had broken her wrist when she turned 11. The psychological pressure was relentless. My grandmother followed me through the house, narrating stories of girls who defied tradition and faced terrible consequences: infertility, difficult births, children born wrong. She had an endless supply of cautionary tales, each more elaborate than the last. One morning, I discovered my birth certificate missing from my hidden folder, my social security card too. When I confronted my mother, she smiled and explained that unstable children shouldn't have access to important documents. I might lose them or use them inappropriately. She would keep them safe until I proved myself responsible again. The threat was clear. Without those documents, I couldn't get a real job, couldn't apply for college, couldn't build a future. But the network had faced this before. Amara's sister had requested replacement documents when her mother tried the same tactic. We helped each other navigate the bureaucracy, learning which forms to file and how to establish independence despite parental interference. My mother's next move targeted the network directly. She began visiting other families, sharing her concerns about their daughters' rebellious influences. She brought gifts, offered help with household tasks, slowly working to turn parents against their own children. Some families wavered. 3 girls suddenly stopped responding to our group messages. We learned through whispered hallway conversations that their mothers had discovered the group chat. Phones were confiscated, internet access restricted. The network felt the loss keenly, but we adapted. We developed offline communication methods, leaving coded messages in library books and creating dead drops in unused lockers. The community temple became a battlefield. My mother volunteered for every committee, positioning herself as a devoted member while spreading poison about the corrupted daughters. She organized prayer sessions for wayward children, thinly veiled attempts to identify which families might be sympathetic to tradition. During one Sunday service, she stood before the congregation and wept about losing her daughter to American influences. She begged for prayers, for guidance, for the community's support in bringing me back to righteousness. The performance was masterful. Several aunties surrounded her afterward, offering comfort and promising to speak sense into me. But we had allies too. Mrs. Patel, whose daughter had escaped the tradition years ago, began hosting tea gatherings for mothers questioning the practice. She shared research about trauma, about cycles of abuse, about raising strong daughters without breaking them first. The gatherings were small, careful, but they planted seeds of doubt. Mothers playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, hiring grandma as a live-in guilt dispenser while weaponizing the the Temple Gossip Network shows some serious strategic thinking for all the wrong reasons. My father's silence became a weapon of its own. He would sit at the dinner table, eating while my mother and grandmother discussed my failures as if I weren't there. When relatives called, he would take the phone into another room, his voice carrying just enough for me to hear him agreeing with their concerns about my mental state. The isolation tactics intensified. My mother befriended my teachers over the summer, volunteering for school committees and building relationships. She painted herself as a concerned parent dealing with a difficult child, laying groundwork for the coming school year. She wanted them predisposed to see me as troubled, unreliable. I spent most nights away from home, rotating between safe houses. But my mother tracked these patterns too. She would appear at Dia's house with homemade food, thanking her mother for taking care of her difficult daughter. She brought gifts for Pretty's family, expressing gratitude while subtly suggesting they were enabling harmful behavior. The pressure worked on some families. 2 safe houses became unavailable, their parents suddenly uncomfortable with the situation. The network scrambled to fill the gaps, but resources were stretching thin. Some girls started sleeping in shifts, sharing beds and floors, making space for those who needed refuge. My grandmother escalated her tactics. She began leaving the ceremonial tools in strategic places, the hammer on my pillow, the specially carved wooden rod in my backpack. Each placement was a reminder, a threat, a promise of what awaited if I surrendered. I documented everything, photographing each incident, building a record. The marriage proposals intensified. My mother invited eligible families for dinner, presenting me like livestock at auction. I would arrive home to find strangers in our living room, evaluating me while my mother listed my flaws and the strong hand I needed. When I refused to participate, she apologized for my rudeness, explaining it as further evidence of my need for discipline. One family seemed particularly interested. Their son was 10 years older, recently divorced, known for his strict adherence to tradition. My mother glowed as she described how he could provide the structure I desperately needed. The conversations made my skin crawl, but walking out would only fuel her narrative of instability. The network developed new strategies. We created detailed escape plans for each girl, including emergency contacts, safe locations, and resource lists. We practiced scenarios, drilling responses to various threats. If someone's mother mentioned marriage, we had protocols. If documents went missing, we knew the steps. If ceremonies were attempted, we had interventions ready. My mother must have noticed the organization. She began showing up at random times, trying to catch us off guard. She would appear at the library during our study sessions, at the park during our meetings, always with plausible explanations. Just happened to be passing by, thought she'd bring snacks, wanted to see how the girls were doing. The surveillance extended online. Fake social media profiles appeared, sending friend requests to network members. The profiles looked legitimate, claiming to be distant cousins or family friends, but the questions they asked were too specific, too targeted. We learned to verify every contact, creating authentication systems to protect our communications. My 18th birthday loomed like a deadline. Once I was legally an adult, some protections would vanish. My mother knew this. Her attempts to regain control intensified as the date approached. She filed paperwork claiming I was mentally incompetent, requiring continued guardianship. The forms were riddled with lies, but fighting them would require lawyers we couldn't afford. The network rallied. Parents who had abandoned the tradition offered support. A lawyer aunt provided pro bono advice. Teachers wrote character references. Slowly, we built a counter case. Evidence that I was competent, capable, thriving despite the circumstances. But the process was exhausting. Another drain on already limited resources. My mother's campaign turned to the younger girls. She began inviting my cousins for special outings, ice cream trips, and movie nights. During these excursions, she would probe for information about the network, about which girls were involved, about what we discussed. She offered rewards for intelligence, creating a spy network of children. We had to adapt our security. Meetings became need to know. Information was compartmentalized. We developed cover stories for our gatherings, legitimate reasons to explain our time together, study groups, sports practice, drama club rehearsals, anything to provide plausible deniability. The financial warfare continued. My mother contacted the catering company where I worked, expressing concerns about my mental health and reliability. She suggested they might be liable if something happened, if my instability caused an incident. The owner thankfully saw through the manipulation, but it was a reminder of her reach. She tried similar tactics with other employers. Some girls lost their jobs, owners unwilling to risk the drama. The economic pressure was strategic. Without money, we couldn't save for escape. Without jobs, we couldn't build independence. Without resources, we might be forced to comply. But every attack taught us resilience. We learned to open bank accounts at institutions where our families didn't have connections. We used post office boxes for important mail. We created backup plans for our backup plans, always staying one step ahead of the escalating control attempts. The community fracture deepened. Temple services became tense, families sitting in rigid groups based on their stance on tradition. Conversations stopped when certain people approached. Invitations to community events came with conditions, subtle tests of loyalty. The unified facade cracked, revealing deep divisions. My mother positioned herself as a defender of culture, rallying the traditional families around her. She organized heritage classes for young girls, thinly veiled indoctrination sessions about women's duties and the importance of sacrifice. Parents who refused to enroll their daughters faced social consequences, exclusion from community events. The classes became recruiting grounds. My mother identified girls from traditional families who might be wavering, offering them special attention and gifts. She was building a future generation, trying to ensure the tradition survived even if our network succeeded in protecting current victims. We responded by creating our own programs, self-defense workshops disguised as fitness classes, know your rights sessions hidden within study groups. We taught younger girls to recognize manipulation, education, to understand consent, to value their bodily autonomy. Every girl we reached was a victory against the cycle. The battle for hearts and minds extended to extended family. My mother called relatives overseas, sharing her version of events. Soon, I was receiving messages from cousins and aunts expressing disappointment, urging me to respect tradition. The international pressure was overwhelming, a chorus of voices insisting I was bringing shame upon the family name. But distance also provided perspective. Some relatives who had left the homeland years ago began reaching out privately, sharing their own stories of escape. An aunt in California admitted she had fled to avoid the ceremonies. A cousin in New York revealed she had protected her daughters by cutting contact. The network extended beyond our immediate community. My mother's desperation peaked as senior year approached. She attempted to withdraw me from school, filing paperwork claiming homeschooling would better address my needs. The school administration, aware of the situation, required meetings and evaluations. The bureaucratic process bought time, but the threat remained. She began suggesting I was possessed, that my rebellion was supernatural rather than rational. She brought in spiritual healers, women who performed elaborate rituals to drive out whatever demons had corrupted me. The sessions were exhausting. Hours of chanting and smoke and accusations. I endured them to avoid escalation, but documented everything. The ceremonies evolved into performances. My mother would weep and wail, calling upon ancestors to witness her suffering. The healers would declare they sensed darkness, resistance to righteousness. They prescribed fasting, isolation, spiritual cleansing, all designed to weaken resolve, to make compliance seem easier than resistance. But the network had prepared for this too. We researched the techniques, understanding the psychological manipulation behind spiritual warfare. We supported each other through the sessions, debriefing afterward to process the experience. What was meant to break us became another source of strength. The summer heat finally broke with a thunderstorm that knocked out power across the neighborhood. In the darkness, my mother made her move. I woke to find her and my grandmother standing over me, ceremonial tools in hand. The time for subtlety had passed. They would complete the ceremony by force if necessary. But I wasn't alone. The network had developed alert systems for exactly this scenario. A single text triggered a cascade of responses. Within minutes, phones were ringing throughout the house. Concerned friends checking on the power outage. Teachers following up on summer assignments. The doorbell rang repeatedly. Neighbors offering flashlights and candles. The interruptions destroyed any chance of completing the ceremony. My mother retreated, but her eyes promised this wasn't over. The tools returned to their prominent display, waiting for the next opportunity. The war of attrition continued, each side adapting and escalating. As senior year began, the battlefield shifted to school. The father eating dinner while they talk about his daughter like she's not even there makes me wonder what kind of agreement he has with the mother behind closed doors. My mother had spent the summer building relationships with administration and teachers. She volunteered for every possible position, becoming a constant presence. She wanted to monitor my movements, control my environment, limit my access to support systems. But we had prepared for this too. The network included girls across different grades, providing eyes and ears throughout the school. We mapped her volunteer schedule, tracked her movements, created early warning systems. When she appeared unexpectedly, word spread quickly, allowing us to adjust our plans. The marriage pressure intensified as college application season approached. My mother invited the divorced traditionalist for dinner weekly, their conversations growing more specific about timelines and arrangements. She spoke of engagement ceremonies coinciding with graduation, of how marriage would provide the structure higher education couldn't. I played along minimally, enough to avoid immediate confrontation while documenting every conversation. The network helped research legal protections against forced marriage, connecting with organizations that specialized in helping young women escape such situations. We built escape routes, both legal and practical. My mother's final gambit involved my college applications. She attempted to intercept transcripts, interfere with recommendation letters, sabotage the process entirely. If she couldn't control my present, she would destroy my future. But we had anticipated this too. Copies of everything existed in multiple locations. Teachers submitted recommendations directly. Applications were filed from school computers she couldn't access. The war had evolved from physical ceremonies to psychological endurance. Every day brought new challenges, new tactics, new attempts to break our spirit, but every day also brought proof of our resilience. The network had grown from 8 frightened girls to a movement of survivors. As winter approached, something shifted in the community. The monthly CPS visits had taken their toll. Families were tired of scrutiny, tired of investigations, tired of the division. Quiet conversations began in corners, mothers admitting doubts about the tradition. The foundation my mother had fought to preserve was cracking from within. She sensed the change and grew more desperate. Her tactics became erratic, unpredictable. One day she would attempt reconciliation, speaking of compromise and understanding. The next, she would rage about dishonor and threaten complete disownment. The inconsistency was its own form of torture, never knowing which version would greet me. But I had learned to find stability within myself. The network had taught me that family could be chosen, that support could come from unexpected places. Every girl who escaped the ceremonies was a sister. Every mother who broke the cycle was an ally. Every small victory built towards something larger. The tools still sat in our living room, polished and waiting. My grandmother still told her stories of tradition and consequence. My mother still planned and schemed and adapted, but something fundamental had changed. We had proven the ceremonies weren't inevitable. We had shown that daughters could refuse their inheritance of pain. As my 18th birthday approached, I knew the war wasn't ending. It was transforming. Legal adulthood would bring new freedoms but also new vulnerabilities. The network would continue to evolve, supporting girls through different stages of resistance. Some battles we would win, others we would survive, but we would not break. The strength my mother had tried to create through fractures had emerged instead through solidarity. Every girl who learned to fake a fall to avoid a ceremony was stronger than tradition. Every mother who chose her daughter over community approval was braver than she knew. Every small act of resistance rewrote the story we had been told. My 18th birthday arrived with an ice storm that trapped everyone indoors. My mother saw it as a sign from the ancestors, divine intervention providing the perfect opportunity. She spent the morning sharpening the ceremonial tools while my grandmother prepared the basement, hanging thick blankets over the windows to muffle sound. I watched their preparations from the kitchen, documenting everything on my phone. The network had taught me to always have evidence ready. My emergency bag sat by the back door, packed with essentials and the replacement documents I'd obtained months earlier. Preeti's family expected me within the hour, but the ice made travel impossible. My father emerged from his study carrying rope. The sight of it made my stomach clench. They planned to ensure I couldn't escape this time. He tested the strength of the fibers while avoiding my gaze, his movements mechanical and practiced. My mother nodded her approval, then sent him to check that all exits were secure. The power flickered, threatening to fail completely. My grandmother lit candles throughout the house, creating an eerie atmosphere that reminded me of the old country stories she loved to tell. She hummed traditional songs while arranging the flames, each melody another reminder of the heritage I was betraying by refusing to break. I retreated to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My phone buzzed with messages from the network, girls checking in as the storm worsened. Several reported similar preparations in their homes, mothers taking advantage of the weather to attempt postponed ceremonies. We activated our emergency protocols, though the ice limited our options. Through the door, I heard my mother organizing the basement, the scrape of furniture being moved, the clink of metal tools being arranged. She called out instructions to my grandmother about the proper positioning of ceremonial items. Their efficiency spoke of years of practice, generations of women preparing to break their daughters. My phone battery showed 30%. I sent my location to trusted contacts, along with a timeline of events. If something happened, there would be a record. The network had learned from girls who disappeared during family trips, returning weeks later with healed fractures and hollow eyes. Documentation was our first line of defense. The bathroom doorknob rattled. My father's voice demanded I come out, that it was time to fulfill my duty. I stayed silent, knowing that engaging would only escalate the situation. He rattled harder, then I heard him walking away, probably to get tools to remove the door. I climbed onto the sink and pushed open the small window. Ice coated everything, making escape treacherous. But staying meant surrendering to the ceremony. I squeezed through the opening, my jacket catching on the frame. The cold hit like a physical blow, stealing my breath. My feet hit the ground hard, sliding on the ice. I grabbed the side of the house for balance, then began moving toward the street. Behind me, I heard shouting as they discovered my escape. The back door slammed open, my father's heavy footsteps crunching through the frozen yard. I ran, slipping and sliding, using parked cars for support. My phone vibrated constantly, the network tracking my progress through shared location. Amara lived 6 blocks away, her parents sympathetic to our cause. If I could reach her house, I'd have sanctuary. My mother appeared at the end of the block, having circled around to cut me off. She held the ceremonial hammer, its weight familiar in her grip. Her face showed no emotion as she advanced, determined to complete what she'd started 8 years ago. I changed direction, heading for the main road where witnesses might intervene. The ice betrayed me. My feet went out from under me, sending me sprawling onto the frozen pavement. Pain shot through my wrist as I caught myself, a bitter irony given the circumstances. My mother gained ground, her practiced steps navigating the ice with ease. A car horn blared. Dia's older brother pulled up beside me, his vehicle equipped with chains for the weather. He threw open the passenger door without hesitation. I scrambled inside as my mother reached the car, her hammer striking the window in frustration. The safety glass held as he accelerated carefully away. He drove me to the network's designated safe house, an apartment rented by 3 girls who'd aged out of their family homes. They welcomed me with blankets and hot tea, checking my wrist for serious injury. Just bruised, nothing broken. We laughed at the dark humor of it, how I'd injured myself escaping injury. My phone exploded with calls from my parents, then extended family, then community elders. I let them go to voicemail, each message more threatening than the last. Legal action, disownment, curses upon my future children, the usual arsenal of guilt and intimidation. The storm continued through the night. We monitored social media and group chats, tracking which girls had made it to safety and which remained trapped. 2 reported completed ceremonies, their mothers taking advantage of the isolation. We documented everything, building cases for future CPS reports. By morning, the ice began to melt. My 18th birthday had passed without ceremony, making me legally free from parental control. But I knew my mother wouldn't accept defeat easily. The network helped me plan my next moves, securing important documents and protecting my assets from family interference. I returned to school to find my mother had been busy. She'd filed reports claiming I'd stolen family property, attempting to have me arrested. The school resource officer pulled me aside, explaining the accusations while clearly not believing them. The network's documentation proved invaluable, showing a pattern of harassment rather than theft. My college acceptances arrived at the school counselor's office, safely away from family interference. Several good schools, with enough financial aid to attend without parental support. Talk about turning a winter storm into your own personal action movie. Sliding across ice while mom chases you with a hammer really puts those school fire drills into perspective. The counselor helped me navigate the complexities of declaring independence for financial aid purposes, another battle in the ongoing war. My mother escalated her public campaign. She attended school board meetings, claiming the district was harboring runaway children and destroying families. She brought other traditional mothers as support, creating scenes that made local news. But the coverage backfired, drawing attention to the abuse abuse we'd been documenting. The network responded strategically. We attended the same meetings, sitting quietly while she ranted. Our presence alone undermined her narrative. How could we be unstable runaways when we showed up to every event, calm and collected? The contrast spoke louder than any words we might have offered. Spring arrived with a final confrontation. My mother appeared at school with the ceremonial tools, demanding the administration allow her to complete her maternal duty. Security removed her as she screamed about tradition and honor. The display shocked even her supporters, too public and too desperate to explain away. That night, my father called from a different number. His voice sounded tired as he explained that my mother had been hospitalized for evaluation. The public breakdown had forced the family to act. He didn't apologize or acknowledge the abuse, but he suggested I might want to stay away for a while. I spent graduation day surrounded by chosen family. The network filled the audience, cheering as each of us crossed the stage. My parents' absence felt like freedom rather than loss. We'd survived to see this moment, diplomas in hand and futures ahead that didn't require broken bones. Summer brought unexpected changes. Mrs. Patel's tea gatherings had grown into a full movement. Mothers who'd quietly doubted the tradition found courage in numbers. They shared their own stories of childhood ceremonies, the pain that never fully healed, the daughters they'd lost to the cycle. Some families began reconciling, not through dramatic apologies or tearful reunions, but through small gestures. A birthday card sent without mention of ceremonies. A graduation gift delivered through intermediaries. Tiny cracks in the wall of tradition that might someday become doorways. My mother remained committed to her beliefs, but her influence had waned. The community had seen her desperation, her willingness to destroy her daughter rather than abandon tradition. Other mothers quietly distanced themselves, choosing their daughters over dogma. The monthly meetings stopped altogether. I prepared for college with mixed emotions. Leaving meant safety from direct confrontation, but also abandoning younger girls still trapped in the cycle. The network assured me they would continue the work. New leaders emerged, teaching the next generation to protect themselves. My grandmother returned to the old country, taking the ceremonial tools with her. She left without goodbye, her disappointment too deep for words. My father sent a message through my aunt, suggesting that time might heal what tradition had broken. I didn't respond, knowing some bridges were meant to stay burned. The network evolved beyond emergency response into prevention and education. We created resource guides for teachers, helping them recognize signs of ceremonial abuse. We partnered with cultural centers to provide alternative coming-of-age celebrations that honored heritage without harm. As I packed for college, I reflected on the 8 years since that first broken ankle. The physical scars remained, reminders of what I'd endured, but stronger than those marks were the bonds forged in resistance. Every girl who'd learned to fall safely, every mother who'd chosen differently, every small victory against an ancient wrong. My mother made one final attempt the day before I left for school. She appeared at the apartment where I was staying. No tools or threats, just tears. She spoke of loving me the only way she knew how, of preparing me for a world that would hurt me worse than she ever could. I listened without response, then closed the door. The network threw a farewell party in the park where we'd held so many planning sessions. 28 girls strong now, with more joining each month. We shared stories of survival and strategies for those still fighting. As the sun set, I realized we'd built something our mothers never had, a sisterhood based on protection rather than pain. I left for college carrying more than belongings. I carried the knowledge that cycles could be broken, that tradition wasn't destiny, that daughters could choose their own inheritance. The network would continue without me, but I would always be part of it. We were rewriting the story, one unbroken bone at a time. My new dorm room felt like a sanctuary, states away from basement ceremonies and ceremonial tools, but I kept my emergency contacts close and my documentation backed up in multiple locations. Some habits born of survival became part of who you were. I unpacked slowly, each item placed deliberately in my new space. That first night in the dorm, I video called the network. Girls crowded around phones, sharing updates and celebrating small victories. Another birthday passed without ceremony. Another mother questioning tradition. Another girl learning to protect herself. We were changing our community one choice at a time. The work continued across distances. I helped write grant proposals for self-defense classes. Other girls created social media campaigns raising awareness. We connected with similar networks in other communities, learning that our tradition wasn't unique. Everywhere, daughters were standing up to inherited harm. My studies focused on social work and law, tools to help other girls escape cycles of abuse. Professors noticed my passion for child protection, though they didn't know its source. I excelled in courses about trauma, family systems, and cultural competency. Education became another form of resistance. The first winter break, I didn't go home. Instead, I stayed with Amara's family, helping coordinate network activities remotely. We'd learned that holidays were particularly dangerous times, when family pressure intensified and isolation increased. Our virtual support sessions ran daily, providing connection and safety planning. News filtered through about my family. My father had started attending therapy, according to a cousin. My mother had redirected her energy into temple activities, avoiding mention of the failed ceremonies. The community continued evolving, with younger mothers openly rejecting the tradition. I structured my life around chosen family and purposeful work. Internships at domestic violence organizations, research on intergenerational trauma, building resources for girls trapped in similar situations. Every accomplishment felt like a victory not just for me, but for all the girls still fighting. The network flourished without my daily presence. New leaders emerged, bringing fresh strategies and perspectives. They organized workshops in schools, created peer support groups, and maintained the emergency response system we'd built. The movement had become self-sustaining. As sophomore year began, I received an unexpected message. A young cousin, just turning 10, had found my old posts about the network. She wanted to know how to protect herself. I connected her with current members, watching another girl join the resistance. The cycle of protection continued. My mother attempted contact through various channels, but I maintained boundaries. The price of peace was distance. Some relationships couldn't be repaired, only survived. I focused on building a future free from the inheritance of pain she'd tried to pass down. The work was far from over. Girls still faced ceremonies in secret. Mothers still struggled between tradition and love. Communities still grappled with changing values. But every girl who escaped, every mother who chose differently, every family that broke the cycle proved change was possible. I found strength in purpose, healing and helping others escape what I'd endured. The network had saved me, and now I worked to ensure it would save others. We were daughters who refused our inheritance of pain, choosing instead to inherit resilience, resistance, and the power to protect each other. My story wasn't unique, but it was mine. Every scar a reminder of what I'd survived. Every achievement a testament to the network that caught me when I fell. Every day a choice to build something better than what we'd inherited. We were rewriting our stories, creating new traditions based on strength without breaking. The ceremonial tools gathered dust in my grandmother's homeland, while we built lives of our own choosing. Our mothers had believed suffering was preparation for life. We'd learned that solidarity was stronger than suffering, that protection could be its own tradition. The cycle had broken against our resistance. I studied, worked, and built a life that would have been impossible if I'd let them break my collarbone at 15. Each semester brought new challenges and opportunities. The network remained my anchor, reminding me that survival was just the beginning. We were thriving, proving that daughters could forge their own paths. My inheritance wasn't pain. It was the strength found in resistance, the bonds forged in protection, the knowledge that cycles could end. We were the generation that said no, that chose differently, that protected each other when our mothers wouldn't. Our story was still being written, but it would never include broken bones as birthright. The tools remained in the old country, relics of a tradition we'd made obsolete. We were building something new, one protected girl at a time. Our inheritance was choice, and we chose each other. The network lived on, a testament to the power of daughters who refused to break. We'd found our strength not through fractures, but through standing together, whole and unbroken. Well, that's a wrap on our time together today. Kinda makes you wonder what stories we'll end up unraveling next time, doesn't it? Until then, take care. If you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.